Hey guys, what's going on? So today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a short video. Don't have a big thing to do, just installing my wideband. It should be pretty simple. I just have to install it in the header, do a little wiring, and I'm pretty much set. So I'll show you what I've got so far. Alright, so I already got the wideband plugged in, nice and good. I tapped the bung just to make sure those threads were good. So that's all in there. And then from there, that plugs into this cable. And this cable is going to get run through the firewall here where I had this little square, as you can see. My friend Josh mentioned that he was worried about the actual wire rubbing on the outside of that and eventually wearing through the insulation on it, so that it would constantly ground this power wire for the fan. And that was a good note. So what I ended up doing was I cut the inside square out of this grommet that was there and split it a little bit so I can pass it around bigger wires, so I can pop that right in there now. That'll be good. So I've got this interior apart a little bit, and I've got sort of a plan for this. So I took the tombstone out and I took one of the center vents out, and a lot of people do these with Miatas. Gauges are generally mostly the same size as these housings for the old vents. So what I did is I just took the collar off, took this apart a bit, and then I used this bracket to stabilize the outer collar against the gauge. And that pops right back into the tombstone. And then setting up this gauge is pretty simple. This thick wire just plugs into that harness I showed you for the sensor. And then you get power and ground. And then this yellow wire is the signal wire, and I'm just going to plug that right into my old O2 sensor plug. And then the white wire is an option for dimming the gauge when the lights are on. And I'm going to use this little plug, which goes to a light bulb in my center console that I don't use. I'm going to use that for power because that comes on with the headlights. So yeah, it should work out pretty well, and I'm going to get it all set up now. Oh yeah, and the other thing I did was I decided I'm going to put my switch for my fan in this little pocket area that goes right about here when everything's in. And I'm just going to have it sit right about here. And I made this little hole in the back so I can just pass the wires through. And that'll be pretty good. So this yellow wire is going to be the signal wire for the wideband, and that's going to run through the gauge and then back, and I want to run that into the harness. So what I'm going to do is just take the stock O2 sensor, the narrowband, chop it right here, and solder this with this yellow wire so that I can use the same connector. You can see I got some wires passed through here. This is the yellow wire, which is the signal wire to the ECU. And then this black wire is the signal wire from the sensor that's going to plug straight into the gauge. So I'm going to start getting the gauge hooked up and plugged in and everything, all that stuff soldered. I want to make sure, or actually not soldered, I want to do quick connects so that I can unplug this and take it out whenever I need to. Alright guys, so it's a little while later. And I've pretty much got all my wiring sorted kind of like I want it. So I put all these quick disconnects on the gauge and all the wires coming out of it, so I can just pop this out whenever I need to. And then the other end, I used some more of that braided shielding. Looks really nice. You can see it goes all the way back there. And let's see. This one, the smaller one, has the power and ground that I'm going to use. And then the bigger one houses the ground, the signal wire, and or both signal wires, so the one from the sensor and the one to the ECU. And then right here is where I'm going to use my power for the dimming feature. And yeah, that looks really good. So I think I'm going to start putting in I'm gonna start actually putting everything together and getting it set, because at this point I'm pretty good. And then from there I need to go put in the header and calibrate the sensor and everything. All right, so this looks really chaotic for what it is, but it's actually pretty organized. I spent a while last night just getting everything figured out, all these connections done. Everything is connected correctly, and I'm about to put everything back in. At first, the gauge wasn't working a little last night, and I kind of gave up figuring it out because it was late. And I came back this morning, and I thought I had things put together wrong, so I started looking at this whole mess, and it was fine. And then I forgot that I had actually popped the cigarette lighter fuse. Oh God, there it goes. I had actually popped that fuse when I was wiring up my switch in the first place. So that was the only problem. Replace the fuse, comes right on. So I'm going to put this all back together and then go ahead and calibrate the sensor. So I got everything together. The switch, I'm just going to write stuff in place right there. I'm just going to stick it right there. And then gauge looks really good. And if I hit the ignition, it's going to go through its little cycle, and it's just going to heat up the gauge and then calibrate, and then it'll show me because it's outside of the exhaust right now and I haven't run the car, so it's going to show me the ambient. And there we go. Sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and install the sensor in the exhaust, and then we can run it and see what I'm actually getting. So right now I'm trying to just let it auto-tune and see if that helps the idle a little bit. It's getting better because it's warming up, but as you can see, gauge is working. Definitely rich right now, but we'll fix that. Alright guys, so I got this all finished up. Gauge works well, reads everything correctly. I tried to take it for a little test drive, although I actually had some wheel bearing noise that I need to resolve. I ordered some new wheel bearings, and then my intake isn't secured still. It's still really loose, as you can see. So I need to find more of a permanent, well, I don't have a permanent mounting solution for that, so I definitely need to do that. But otherwise, I'm really happy with how the gauge came out and all the wiring and everything. Works flawlessly. I haven't had any problems with it, and I think I'm pretty good for like how long it's going to last and everything. I'm not worried about any of the wires rubbing anywhere. Right down in here is where I passed everything through. This big connector is the actual sensor input. I looped it up around. It's not actually kinked anywhere, and that comes straight up from the sensor and then goes in here. And like I was saying, I actually put that little grommet back in there. I cut the square out in the middle and then cut a slit in it so I could put them around, or put it around the thicker wires with the big connectors on them. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy about with how that worked out. And then I passed the other wires through it. And if we come inside, you can see the gauge looks really good in there. Everything's all set, tidied up. I got my little switch right here. It does work, and I'm just gonna, I think I'm gonna put some right stuff on this, or well, whatever, glue, put it right there. I don't want to go cutting into this. So yeah, and I'll start up the car, but it runs kind of shit. I'll show you the gauge works. Too much when it's cold, but you can see it's working. Obviously I have some tuning to work out, but the idle right now is kind of shit. Right now I'm actually slightly on throttle, but if I let off, it actually, yeah, it dies when it's cold. So it idles okay-ish when it's warm, but I definitely need to do some tuning there. It's all because of the new sensor I put in and the inputs it's getting. I just need to fix the fuel tables and everything. So I'm gonna do that and work with the rest of the tune when I get that intake figured out more. Because I mean, this just isn't good enough. I'm not gonna drive around with it going like this. Obviously it's gonna hit everywhere. It actually started hitting on the plate right here on the backside. You can kind of see it melted off a little bit. I think I'm gonna put some, well, I don't know, I might put some sticky foam there or something, but I don't want that to melt off either. We'll see, but yeah, definitely need a proper mounting solution for that. The radiator and everything is actually doing really well. I haven't had any cooling issues, haven't had any leaks anywhere with this higher pressure cap. This gold foil is helping a lot more than I thought it would. It really insulates the heat. Like when it's full temp, when it's full operating temp, I can grab this with my hand and it's totally fine. So other than the intake, I'm super happy with how everything's turned out, and I think I'm pretty much set with it for now. I actually went and took off my spacers as well. I went to take the car for a test drive, and the steering ended up being really heavy. I know these spacers are not as big as a lot of people run, so I might need to just align the car with these on, but I'm not really sure about that. I mean, wheel spacers, they do put a little extra strain on your wheel bearings, and I have to change those 2 to 3 times a year because of autocross anyway, so if I'm putting more strain on those, I'd rather not. I'd rather minimize that if I can, so I might keep these off and save them for another time. Who knows? I also just went ahead and gave the car a little bit of a wax. It's funny how good this paint comes out. The thing was repainted because it did get in an accident before I bought it, so it looks really nice, but I mean, for fuck's sake, for a Miata, looks really good. And you know, even just a little bit of waxing, even though it has stuff like this side isn't doing too great, and you know, dents in the trunk and stuff, but it looks really good overall. But anyway, that's it for this video. It was kind of short, took a couple days, but yeah, I'm excited about how everything turned out. So I'll see you guys in the next one.